So I will call this, what month is it, March meeting of the Climate Action Planning Committee meeting to order. It's 6:05 p.m. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you again. And our first agenda item for this evening is to approve the minutes from the February meeting. Did everybody have a chance to review? I know, Arthur, thank you for your updates. Did anybody else have any changes?
I'll move their approval, Mr. Chairman.
Great, second. And we don't need a roll call vote, right? Because, so all in favor? Aye. Excellent. Motion carries, minutes are approved. Great. Now, second topic, and let's see where we get with this, is we're still in need of a secretary for the committee. And Lisa has offered to take notes for this meeting, but is reluctant to take the role permanently. Have any of you moved on that topic?
Could we rotate this job?
I don't know. That's okay.
Okay, about me too.
I mean, what's that?
The idea of rotating.
I mean, it works for me. I think we can punt on voting in a secretary until somebody tells us that we're required to act. Or maybe, once the vacancies are filled, it might be easier to resolve this permanently. So you're doing it today.
I am.
Do I have a volunteer for April? No. I'll chase you down after the meeting, perhaps. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Yes, Ryan. Oh, volunteer. Wow, you're the best.
Thank you.
All right, so that does it for item 2. Now the third, move public comment up to the beginning because we have we have 2 vacancies on the committee. One appointed by the select board that is dictated by Tracy Dyke Goodman, and our agenda item after this is to discuss and vote on a recommendation to the select board. So this is for the vacancy that's appointed by the select board. And I think there are 3 candidates and 2 of them are here to give themselves a brief introduction. So why don't we start in the room here?
Hi, my name is Kim Johnson. I've lived in Milton for over 15 years. My husband's a town meeting member and I have a couple of sons in Milton Public Schools. And I've been meaning to get more involved in the town for a while, and I would especially like to serve on a climate action committee. I graduated from UMass with a degree in economics and a certificate in environmental planning, and I interned at Boston City Hall while I was there in the environment department. My current career is specialty foods, like I sell cheese, but I've always been really interested in environmental issues. My passion is native plant gardening to support biodiversity, and I'm a huge advocate for planting gardens that sustain birds, pollinators, and other wildlife in suburban yards. And I looked over everything that you guys had on, like what you've been working on, and it just seems like a lot of work, and I'd love to contribute to it. I'd be happy to commit a good amount of time to help Milton develop and implement the climate action work plan. I have strong communication and organizational skills, and along with an interest in learning more and connecting with people who want to protect Milton and its inhabitants from the effects of climate change. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Steven?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Steve Hopkin. I am a, I guess 24-year resident of Milton. We moved in 2000. We live on Elliott Street right next to the Neponset River. So climate change is certainly something of interest to us. My background is in industrial organizational psychology. I work for the U.S. Department of Transportation Volpe Center, where I am the head of research and technology there. And at the department, I oversee a number of projects, including those with sustainable fuel and land use, transit resilience, mobility, different types, including what happens in disasters and coordinating with FEMA, as well as NEPA related activities. I have a deep interest in this area. I am on the board of the Brookwood Community Farm for Sustainable Agriculture, and I also support Boston Children's Hospital on their safety committee. And like I said, we've been in town for 24 years, and we're interested in if I can give back in some way, either through this committee or supporting it in a less formal world. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Great. Well, thank you all for coming to speak. And we'll move on to item 4, which is to review the applicants for the committee seat and vote on a recommendation to the select board. I think you all should have received the 3 applications that we've received at this point. Matt Panucci wasn't able to make this meeting time, but reconfirmed his interest in serving on the committee to me yesterday. So I think we have three candidates to discuss. And I just want to preface this discussion with firm agreement with Kim's comment that there's a lot of work to do, and though the structure of these public meetings and the way this committee is set up says we have to choose one person to be on the committee, I do hope that we can work with all 3 of you in some material capacity. And maybe we can flesh that out a little more when we move on to the public engagement discussion later. But so I'm quite hopeful that we'll be working with all 3 of you in some way. And then I'll pass it on. Ron,
I just have a question. So there are 2 vacancies, all right? And what's your name? Kim. And the gentleman who's on the line, they're applying for one, and these other 3 people are applying for the other?
well, there are 2 vacancies. One is appointed by the Chamber of Commerce, and we're voting on a recommendation to the select board for their appointment. I suppose it's possible that we could get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, there are these lovely candidates, why don't you appoint one of them?
Is there a defined number of people for the committee? Or is it possible, could even consider to expand the size of the committee to like 3 people at this point?
I think that the select board would do that.
We'd have to make a recommendation to the select board, and they could act upon
Yes.
But wasn't it voted on at town meeting?
it.
Was it voted on at town
No.
meeting? No, it was just the selectmen, yeah.
Just the select board. I believe we had 9 members.
Right.
Recollection.
So there were 7 currently with 2 vacancies.
Correct.
And we also wanted a student representative.
We talked about, I didn't remember to put that on the agenda, sort of running out of space. But no, I think the general, I think the select board can, if we wanted to recommend that it should be larger, we could make that recommendation.
So I've been in touch, I'm a member of the chamber, and I've reached out to the president, and they haven't really found anybody. So I kind of was thinking when I heard specialty cheese, could you theoretically be like like, is it a business or are you associated with the business or what do you?
Yeah, but the business is in Lynn, Mass, so.
That's okay, yeah, because there's nobody interested from the chamber. So, but if your approach is from like
Oh, sure.
a business one, maybe I could call him up and ask him. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know what why the selectmen wanted someone from the chamber, except for I think it probably had to do with, I don't know, commercial buildings, you know, so I'm not really sure. And they only meet like once a month, so I could reach out and find out.
Well, there's plenty of work
Yeah,
to
Right,
do. So,
but I'm pretty sure no one from the chamber wants to be on it. I didn't go to their last meeting. But I just wanted to double check that they didn't have a member who all of a sudden was interested, but I really asked a lot of people.
well, thank you for that. I didn't realize you'd already been working that room.
Yeah, so, well, not through, the president, but through the other members. So, you know, the people I talked to didn't really have an interest, so maybe I'll just, reach out more directly just to confirm.
Yeah,
Because they, I think, can have an appointee.
Yeah, right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, following up on these comments, the membership says, with respect to the Milton Chamber of Commerce, one member of the Milton Chamber of Commerce or its designee
right.
as selected by the chamber.
Mhm.
So it would be appropriate it wouldn't be inappropriate for us to make a recommendation to the chamber for a person who could be the designee.
Right,
And I would suggest that we might take that course of action.
mhm.
And I don't know if the chamber has to take a vote,
Yeah,
you know, on it, but, I could just forward it to or you could forward it to the president,
yeah,
and maybe spin your application a little bit
Okay.
to be business,
Yeah.
you know, through the lens of a business, maybe, I don't know. That, or at least talk to the president and find out. But if they haven't appointed anybody,
Right.
it's a shame that we're down one person.
So- If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the Climate Action Planning Committee request that the Milton Chamber of Commerce appoint a designee to represent it in the Climate Action Planning Committee.
and one of these candidates.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's wise. We want to get up to our full numbers. As
can I
rapidly as
second
possible.
that?
Sure can.
Well, do we want to wait until we have a recommendation? I mean, I know it's difficult because we got to pick somebody, and I really don't want to because all three of these candidates bring great experience. I appreciate the sort of nonprofit leadership experience that Mr. Panucci and Topopkin offer as well. I think that's relevant. We definitely need help on transportation, which I think is a challenging area to tackle. I did have a chance to meet with Mr. Panucci, who's until recently was the director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, and serves on the board of that and some other nonprofits. And so he brings a passion for conservation and, a lot of network in town as somebody who's been active in a large nonprofit that most people in Milton have heard of. So I think we have 3 people here that we love to work with. I suppose the recommendation could be, please expand the number of seats and appoint them both.
That would be a separate
Yeah,
But right now, we have a motion on the table that's been seconded, to have the chamber appoint a designee from among the three candidates.
right. And so just leave it at that.
So we have to have a vote
Okay,
on the motion.
great. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Passes, thank
So then that would allow, so we'd have to talk to the chamber president
you. Mhm.
and probably, send them the three. Now, was there four or did Joe not?
Joe,
Do you know?
he withdrew.
Which, okay, so then maybe the chamber would pick they would review and then pick their designee. Is that how it would go?
Mhm.
so, I would move them to, we recommend to the select board that we, increase the size of the committee by, one more person, so that, all three of the candidates could be, added.
Would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment to have that, your recommendation or your motion have added to it the student member as well?
Yes,
An additional member and a student member.
and a student member.
I'll second. Well, I'm not gonna second this. You have a second? Who would appoint the student member?
We could ask that the student member be, it's a good question.
Could be the school committee.
Well, we have,
Recommendation from the science department of schools.
what the student wanted, that would exclude anybody from Milton Academy or Pomfront who is a resident of the town of Milton. So we want the student to be a resident of the town of Milton. Or maybe we could say, certainly in high school and somehow affiliated with an area associated with who work at the Climate Action Planning Committee. I know we have two environmental courses at the high school. Milton Academy has an advanced environmental science course. Would that be fair? Or
I usually hire a high school kid to work in my company, and I usually write a letter it happens every 3 or 4 years, where I write a letter to the science department and ask for recommendations of students, and then I interview them. I usually get like 4 or 5 altogether to interview and then move forward. But I've had very good response from the teachers, or the head of the science department at Milton High School, Milton Academy, Bonpon Academy, and the last person I hired happened to be from Bonpon. Before that, I have other private schools too. But also, this is a way that can be done, and in my experience, very good response from the teachers and interest on the part of the students.
And if it's just a Milton resident, I mean, they could be BC High, Xaverian, or Swan, anywhere else.
But just mechanically, is the recommendation of a Milton resident, a student Milton resident, and this committee would review applications and select them? Okay.
Well, that's what my question was. Usually I thought the selectmen review the application since this is their,
Yeah.
board. Like, that's why I thought it was a little strange that we were reviewing it. I thought
Well, that was my
that
question.
they would just review and then they appoint.
I don't have a strong opinion. I just want it to be correct.
Yeah, I don't.
In the Conservation Commission, the selectmen usually expect a recommendation from the commission.
Yeah,
So I think that's true of some of the other committees as well when there are vacancies. So moving what John has posited, probably out them, because they're not going to be in a position to automatically
Okay,
pull somebody out of the air.
just didn't want to make sure we weren't overstepping.
So the select board will appoint these ultimately, but we will provide them with a simple decision. So, good idea.
And we could also specifically ask for, someone that's a junior, so that, have it for 2 years.
Mhm.
That's what I usually do,
That makes sense.
or even longer, they go to school locally. Or go to college locally.
So can we recap the motion? I think that there's a,
Should I?
yes, please.
Okay, so, we moved that the select board add another person, an adult, and a student who's a resident of Milton going into their junior year. I seconded it, we would ask the local science departments, and perhaps, I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'm not some, we could advertise it elsewhere for students who live in Milton but don't go to school here. So we would ask for nominees from science departments. We would provide a recommendation to the select board, and the select board would accept that nomination.
That's been seconded,
Did I catch it all?
yeah.
Okay.
Volunteer to write the letter to the high schools,
That's great.
since I have all the information already.
Can we vote?
All right, hold on. Okay,
But just to be clear, we're asking the select board to increase the size of the climate action planning committee by 2 positions
Mhm.
to be appointed by the select board upon the recommendation of the climate action committee.
Is it too late to offer an amendment?
No, that was just clarifying that
Yeah.
to help Lisa.
And we currently have 3 applications. We're asking for an expansion. 1 adult, we have 1 vacancy, 1 additional student. That they select from among the 3 applicants, and we're going to recommend the Chamber of Commerce appoint the 3rd. So hopefully all 3 of these applicants can join. Was there an amendment there? I don't think there was. Okay. So, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you very much.
So that means we won't nominate anybody or vote on anybody until we have the information back from the chamber and the select board.
I guess so.
Because as of now, we only could really nominate or approve 1.
Right, and the select board would have to take that up anyway. So perhaps they'll deal with it all in one fell swoop when they do take that. So I think there's a follow-up there to,
Just to let
let them know what
let the
we
applicants
need
know
from
the
them.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be pretty easy with Maggie for us to give to the chair of the chamber, Jeff Fullback, the names of the 3 candidates and ask them upon the recommendation of the committee to identify one of them to be their designee.
Yeah.
And then we could go forward with the others. After that. Does that make sense?
Yes. All right, so are we ready to move on to item 5, the presentation from Good Energy on the CEA program contract updates?
Allison is in Are you able to share your screen?
Let's see. Everyone see this?
Yeah, beautiful.
Hi, everybody. My name is Allison McNeil. I'm one of the client managers on the Good Energy team. I'm still getting my voice back, so just bear with me. But lovely to join you all tonight. Thanks for having me. I mainly handle launches and transitions of programs, and Milton's program. This current contract ends in November of 2024. So we'll be up for renewal for this coming December. So I'll be working closely with the town. Tonight we have a couple of program updates, and then we'll really dive into this renewable energy percentage question. And just to preface you all as we walk through this, the decision that we'll be talking about tonight is a recommendation for how much additional renewable energy will be included in the default product in this next upcoming renewal. And let's jump in. So this current contract that we're in began in September of 2021. It had a 10% voluntary renewable added into the default. Just as a reminder, this default product is what most people end in. It's the automatic enrollment product. So anyone who is on Eversource basic service in the town automatically gets opted into this basic product or this Milton Green default product unless they choose to leave the program, opt up to the 100% or opt into the basic. Sorry, we skipped something there. So this is, we really just put this together to celebrate the program a little bit. What you're looking at here, the blue line that kind of goes all crazy is Eversource's residential rate. This changes every 6 months. And the green rate, that flat line you see is Milton's program. So what we've had a 10-cent rate stable since fall of 2021, now coming into the winter of 2024. And it has really provided some serious stability for participants. And we're really proud of that. I don't think anybody could have expected what was going to happen, post fall 2021, but we certainly did not expect that. And we do want to set expectations that this has been a really volatile 2 years for gas and electricity prices. And we don't know what will happen, but we likely can't expect something like this. I mean, this has been such a successful program. So we just want to set expectations that this has been a really, really successful run. We certainly cannot guarantee savings in the future. We don't know what Eversource basic service rate will be. But really, it's been so fantastic. This is our program participation. You can see we started the graph here all the way on the right side. You can see the access isn't zero; it's 6,000. So we've grown up to over 7,000 enrollments over the past few years. And enrollments stay really high. They dip typically, as Eversource rates change. That's one of the features we're proud of in the program, is that you can leave at any time and come back into the program, and people take use of that. But we're currently well above where we started. And I'm just trying to fly through this so we can get to the renewable energy discussion. But currently, Milton they have NextEra as their electricity supplier. So that's all the basic electricity, or what we call the residual mix, comes from NextEra. The additional renewables, so that extra 10% in the default product and all the additional renewables in the 100% product that make up that mix, come from Green Energy Consumers Alliance. They source from more local renewable energy projects. And you can see this map here on the screen on the left is all the projects that they're purchasing from. So they really do try to keep it as local as possible to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. They also don't include biomass, which is included in the Class 1 renewable energy standards. for the state, and they also provide tax deductible receipts on all voluntary renewables. So for the 100% green folks, that would be all of their electricity, and for the 10% green, that would be 10% of that would be tax deductible. And this will be also an option that we'll see in the upcoming bids. So this is another, Milton can continue with Green Energy Consumers Alliance, or they could just bid with a new supplier. So what we're looking at here is really just how other communities have used their contract to increase or maintain the amount of additional renewables in their default products. We have some crazy outliers. We have our Brooklines, which are, the overachievers who want to have 20 up to 35% additional renewables. Certainly something to take into consideration is when these folks went out to bid. So how much savings they're still allowed to give their residents while increasing the renewable energy in the default product. But we have folks, Dedham, Fairhaven, Westford, who have maintained, and they're happy with the way the program is. So just to give you an idea of what other folks are doing. And then we could spend a little bit of time just breaking down what the renewable energy standard is for Massachusetts. What you're looking at here is from a decade, 2020 to 2030, the change that's scheduled for the renewable energy standard. All of the colored boxes here, everything that's in color is a part of the renewable energy standard. And what part it is in the legend up top, but the gray is what we call residual mix. That's just, that's our base power. It's fossil fuels. And part of the renewable energy standard goal is to decrease how much fossil fuels are ending up in our electricity. So right now, these green bars here, these 10% are what Milton has in their default product. And as we go forward, as the renewable energy standard increases, and then we add 10% or 15 or 20 on top of that, we get closer and closer to closing that gap and getting fossil fuels out of our mix. You'll see by 2030, you would only need 7% of additional renewables to be completely clean energy, which is exciting. There is a waste mix in here. It's it's still burning, but it's considered renewable energy by the state standards. So if we went with Green Energy Consumers Alliance, this would not be in there, which some folks are excited about. And then finally, and I'll leave some space for questions at the end here if we want to go back to anything. But we just threw together a slide for you to see what the real impact of adding renewables into your default looks like for people. When we set this program in 2021, when we went out to bid, the REC costs were a little bit cheaper than what they are now. So then we were seeing about, 37 a REC. Now we're seeing about $40 a REC. So to add 10% in for the average user, it would be about $33 extra above the basic cost, above, basic service cost. And as we go up, of course, that increases. And then also you'll see in 2027, what that would mean for closing that gap, getting the fossil fuels out, how close we'd be to totally clean electricity. We threw 2027 in there as a date because we're typically expecting to see 2 and 3 year options. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having conversations with the town, but ultimately, we'll probably lean on you all to have a suggestion for them for what additional renewable energy you suggest to have in the default product. So I think that's just about it for me, but I'm happy to go back, walk through anything, or just have you facilitate the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that. I think we'll move into item 6, which is a discussion of this and potentially vote on that recommendation. And please stay on so we can ask you questions and maybe keep the slides handy because I know I have a couple of questions. But
Sure.
Would anybody else like to ask questions? Or Any comments?
Why is the kilowatt per hour cost, so high here or much higher? For example, in Ohio, we pay 4 cents per kilowatt hour in an aggregate.
So could we get those prices back up on the screen?
Sure. And just to be clear, these are for the additional renewables. This is not, sorry.
So it's
Get my screen back up.
like 54 cents, not 40 cents.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
but
this was 18.
for anybody who may be curious, but yes, Massachusetts electricity prices are much higher than other states. So that's a valid question. Allison, do you have any
Oh, I'm sorry.
uh,
Sure.
answer to why is Massachusetts electricity more expensive than Ohio?
Yeah. Great question. Massachusetts is definitely one of the most expensive places to receive electricity in the United States. I think we're second or maybe third to Hawaii and California. However, I will just say in the past 2 years, pretty much everywhere we've seen prices really be all over the place. The Russia invading Ukraine has specifically put a strain everywhere, but it wouldn't be, specific to Ohio and Massachusetts. But happy to take that back to my team. We also do have aggregations, Illinois, Ohio as well. So it's a very different market than Massachusetts, but I am happy to take that back to my team.
And just so that we're crystal clear, when it says 0.37 cents per kilowatt hour, those are basis points, right? That's not 37 cents a kilowatt hour we're talking about.
Right. And
is the price per kilowatt hour that people will be paying on the next contract. It's what we're looking at is the additional cost per kilowatt hour that would be added, expected to be added if we went with 10, 15, or 20%. And so this is less, in all of these cases, less than 1 penny per kilowatt hour. For the additional.
Yep, that's correct. And just to clarify, the top line here where you see 37 cents, this is our current contract. So that's what we bid on in 2021. Currently, we're seeing it's more like 40, well, it'd be 0.4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's not 40 cents. So it's gone up a bit, in the past few years. But yes, everything is still less than a cent that would be added to our base rate.
And you had in the version of the slide show that you delivered to the select board, I think there was a slide that showed aggregate savings for residents in the first 3 years, and it's approaching $10 million, if I recall. So almost $1,300 per household that was participating. So in light of that, the giving a little bit of that back and the extra renewable energy, which is the reason that this program exists, so that we can get those clean energy benefits. It's like giving back a very small portion of the savings, which can't be, there you go, yeah. Can't be guaranteed in the future, of course.
Right. Yep, that's right. And in the graph I showed earlier of just showing Eversource rates really having their way over the past few years, this is the result of that is, right now we're 7 cents below basic service rates right now. And we haven't even come close in the past, 2 years.
Milton timed the market really well.
So is this both for residential and commercial?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And what about municipal? Is this what the town is on as well?
I think they have their own municipal contracts.
So why wouldn't
maybe someone could speak.
Yeah, why wouldn't the town be on this too?
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're on, but I could find out for sure.
Yeah. Does the town have a bigger savings?
It would be similar to this, but I'm not sure if we're on the basic or if we've elected to go higher or not.
So we discussed this briefly with, Nick Milano when we met with him, and he did say that they do their own power purchase agreements. And I don't believe that they're adding any additional renewable energy. That's another topic for another day for this committee, I guess.
But, who is their contract with them? When it comes time to renew this in Milton, who signs off on this?
Oh, yeah, the select board will ultimately, approve the go-to-market strategy, right? They'll say what to bid on, and then you'll go at it. Do you maybe want to speak for a moment about what the bidding process looks like?
Sure. Yep. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having a couple of meetings with the town, and the first of which is really to set expectations of if we know going in, if we want to have 10, 15%, those are the things we're going to look for. We'll also talk about term, see what looks good. We probably won't be expecting. I mean, we've had almost over 3 years of a 10-cent rate. Realistically, we might not be expecting 10-cent rates to come back. So we'll really be having a conversation around what's the bottom line that we absolutely can't, press on if we don't want to sacrifice any of these additional renewables. And then we'll have an indicative meeting where we'll look at indicative pricing a couple days before the bid. The market does change pretty rapidly, but typically if there's just a few business days, we'll have a good sense of what it'll be. And that meeting will probably, get real and talk about realistically, can we accommodate whatever renewables we want to add and what term lengths would work for the town. So those will be happening. I think our bid day may be April 3rd or 2nd or 3rd. So we'll be looking in the next couple of weeks to have this finalized.
So going back to the municipal, so I'm kind of a firm believer in that the residents shouldn't be asked to do more than what the town, or we should be doing the same as our municipal. So I'm a little concerned that we're following a different route. But also, have the residents who've opted into this program been asked what their preference is? Because I didn't opt in.
Yep. So at the beginning of the program, we send a customer notification letter letting folks know that you're on Eversource Basic Service, and these folks are automatically opted in unless they opt out. And then we typically do once a quarter a sweep where we send out the same letter to folks who've opened account or have recently come off of third-party supply that they'll be automatically enrolled. But this is an opt-out program. So once you're in, unless you decide to opt out, you're in the program. And with this price change, we of course are messaging this. We want folks to know that the price is changing for this new contract. But if you're in the program, you're in. So when prices change, people don't have to affirmatively opt back in or anything.
And so do the customers get a chance or to weigh in to see if they want to increase it from 10% to 15% or 20%?
They don't get an opportunity to give their feedback on changing the default percentage, but they always have an option to go to our Milton Basic, which is the same electricity that Eversource offers. It's a little bit cheaper than our default product, and it includes no additional renewables. And you could change that at any time. We also do, when we do this upcoming renewal, 30 days before, folks will get this letter and have this announcement. So they'll have 30 days to change, to leave the program or go to basic if they want to hang on to those, more savings.
And I guess maybe it's a question for the select board, because if they're going to choose to vote, to change the default, and maybe this is a question for them, what is their outreach going to be to the customers?
To me, I think this is a very powerful program for tackling climate change. I think the fairness considerations are addressed by the fact that it's a very low friction process to opt out. If paying 0.4 cents per kilowatt hour extra. In this case, to save $1,300 over the course of 2 years, for like $33. If that's too much for somebody, and I can certainly understand that there would be people in town who are very price sensitive who will take that step. But I think the majority, as you can sort of see from the numbers, the majority of residents are not too concerned about this. They're not really paying attention. It's a small amount of money, but it has a big impact on the emissions intensity of our town's use of electricity, 14% of emissions. And I see our role as recommending tactics and strategies to reduce emissions. I think the select board has to weigh that against all sort of needs and considerations and the politics of it, that I think it's our role to make a recommendation. This is a very straightforward strategy for reducing emissions. It's one that if anybody feels harmed by it, they can fix it in, 5 minutes on the internet or a phone call. And the impact on the average household's budget is, measured in tens of dollars, not hundreds or thousands. So I had it on my short list of key action recommendations to recommend that it be pushed up to 20%. I would certainly like to make that recommendation, but take some more discussion first, and there's at least one other perspective.
Excuse my ignorance.
Yeah.
So I live in Milton, and Eversource is my source of electricity. I automatically get this percentage of what they're providing from a renewable resource. All right. And in a way, if I don't want this, I just say, I don't want to use Eversource. I want to use another provider. Is that right?
So Eversource manages the wires, no matter who your supplier is. So what you're changing is your electricity supplier. Massachusetts has had competitive suppliers for a long time. So you could, like when you get a mail from NextEra or that's a supplier change where basically it's still Eversource managing the wires that come into your home, but the generation charge on your bill moves to a different contract.
And I think it says on the bill who your supplier is.
So for example, in February 2021 or 2022, sorry, after the invasion of Ukraine, we had just gotten on this, so we were fixed at a price of 10 something cents per kilowatt hour. Eversource Basic jumped up to 25 cents. That nobody in Milton paid that 25 cents who was opted into this program automatically. Many of them didn't even realize how much money there was. Because people don't keep an eye on their bill, right?
So people who were in the plan, did not opt out, increased the amount of renewable energy that the town was using over fossil fuels, and they saved a lot of money.
And technically the way it works is they use that little bit of extra money to buy renewable energy credits, which are sort of markers of one renewable energy credit per megawatt hour of clean electricity generated on the New England grid. And they're like tradable instruments. So they buy those through an energy supplier, and then there's a renewable energy credit supplier. And it's basically the question is how much.
And that's what my company does that I work for.
Yeah, so my concern is only like we've prepared a whole public engagement plan for the so I would think though increasing from 10% to 20% should also have some type of engagement plan. When you're changing, and again, because I opted out, I'm not comfortable really going from 10 to 20, even though I understand it all. because, I just don't know if the average resident would understand that.
I think the power of this program is that they don't have to. They only have to understand that if they don't like the extra money they're paying, they can go on miltoncea.com and opt out or go down. And there was an outreach process when the program started. Is there going to be another one?
Yes, yep, there will be 30 days before we'll have a letter drop in folks' mailbox updating them that, you know, prices are changing and they have 30 days if they don't want to stay in the program, as well as all the other campaigns that we did at launch. That would be social media, public meetings, you know, anything really to tap the networks that you're concerned about.
And this goes before the select board for a vote, right?
Yes, they'll make the ultimate decision about which.
So citizens who are plugged into the news of the select board, the business of the select board, would have that,
Right, I mean,
that same
they
route.
have the opportunity to hear this public meeting. I know it's not perfect.
Yeah.
We're not, I doubt that the entire town is.
Hey, I'm pretty sure no one's plugged in. I think it takes more than one selectmen's meeting for people to get
Yeah.
plugged in. And again, I don't really have an opinion. But I would think that maybe if you go up to 20% and the people opt out, are you, doing more harm by
Yes.
staying in at the 10%?
That would be the main question.
That would, you know, what more people might opt out and then we're, you know, not helping the overall situation.
That is, I think that's the real question from our perspective. Because if you know, certainly if you took it to an extreme, can put it at 1,000%, which you can do, right? Then most people would opt out and you would achieve them.
Yeah.
I suspect with those tiny, I mean, all three options were less than a penny per kilowatt hour. And with the level of price sensitivity that we observed at the first program, I doubt that it would trigger a massive wave of opt-outs to increase it. So.
And have you seen, from your perspective, when you go from a 10% to a 20%, have you seen people opting out in certain communities?
Typically not. I mean, if they do, we have like 4 to 10% of folks in both, you know, the 100% and basic for most of these towns. So usually these people were going to make a choice regardless of if they were in the program or not. So mostly we find that people in the default are in the default because, you know, like we're talking about, they don't pay attention. And by not paying attention for these past couple of years, they've been saving, you know, now 7 cents. So typically it works in their favor. And I'll just maybe go back to this slide, just in case it helps, that 10%, you know, come 2027 is only 15% of fossil fuels left in your mix. So 10% as the renewable energy standard continues to increase still makes a big hole. Of course, 20% is, you know, even greater. You'd have 5% left. But it also, you know, at that point, we could really talk about if the 100% product, if we might need to reformulate that because our default is getting to that point of nearly 100% renewable.
Yeah, and to be honest, the only reason why I opted out was because I didn't know enough about it. You know, in any program that is, you're automatically in until you opt out, that kind of makes me nervous. So I'm probably the one you probably want to talk to be like, oh, why? You know, and so, because I did, you know, talk to Nick earlier today about it. And I said, I just did it because I didn't trust I had trust issues with the government, and so I wasn't really trusting.
You're not the only one.
So that's just where I am, and you know, and I do actually pay attention to because my business is I only have electric. It's electric key, so I'm always paying attention to my bills. So that's the only reason that I chose was I just got nervous.
If you could still opt back in.
I know, yes,
You'd save money.
I'm open for change. I am open to change.
Um, Anybody else have comments? Thoughts? So I'd like to offer a motion that we recommend 20%. For the reasons that I mentioned.
I second.
So Lisa's doing the second. Okay, so shall we take a vote? I'll actually go around, because I feel like there's something unanimous. John?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to abstain only because I don't have enough information. I'm not for or against.
Sure.
I just, I'm not comfortable making a decision.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. And it's a recommendation, I think, couched in terms of this is a strong strategy for reducing emissions. I think the select board will need to consider more information about cost impact. I think, a big thing that's missing here that they will have visibility into is like, what kind of prices are we able to get in this market, right? I think it will be a different decision if it's a huge increase than if they're able to.
And I would like to know why they're staying at 10%. Why are not our municipal buildings? What's their rationale?
Yeah.
So that was the other question I had.
We should certainly press them on that. I think they just locked in another contract though. Right before I asked.
So did they discuss this, before they locked into another contract?
I'm
Or
not
what
sure.
their reasoning was?
I'm not sure.
I'm not familiar with that discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can ask them.
Thank you, everyone. That was fun. So let's move on to item 7, which is a discussion and potential vote on the public engagement plan. Did everybody have a chance to review, let's see, Ryan, keep one for myself.
You're not sure, so I need to.
Here we go, one.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just give you a little overview on what was going through my mind as I rewrote this. You'll recall that we had a sort of draft public engagement plan, mostly written by Tracy Dyke Redmond. And I think coming back to it after about a month and a half of doing more public outreach, first with the sort of expert and stakeholder conversations, and then more recently I've been talking to a lot of people about the specialized option code. It gave me a more realistic sense of how much effort is required to actually do this. So I tried to simplify and give some more clarity on what the goals are, and also I changed the timelines. I think before we had like very tight windows for doing the different kinds of outreach, like 3 months at a time. I feel like all of them are they're gonna need to be ongoing sort of forever. Just as I go down the rabbit hole on one, like just one of these recommendations, getting into the details, meeting all the stakeholders, going through the town process, it's just a lot, right? So I started to think it's not realistic to have done that for everything that's going to be in this plan before we put together a plan. I think at the last meeting, Ron, you mentioned before we do broad outreach, we need some kind of a draft plan. So the big changes are I took out some details in this timeline. I have a draft plan being written by sort of, in the next month or two. Not with the idea that that'll be the end of it, but we just need to sort of get it down on paper and begin the, more or less ongoing process of, engaging the community on the specifics to refine and ultimately implement. So that's enough of an introduction. Did folks have a chance to read it? Is there any feedback, any suggestions for modifications? Any questions?
For our particular piece of this, under conservation piece, I would be more comfortable moving ahead with community engagement activities after we had an agreement among key stakeholder organizations that we've been consulting with. And there are only 4 of them. So, I would propose convening some sort of meeting around our proposal, get everybody's input, a lot of which I've had already, and then I would feel more comfortable moving out with this.
What timeline would you propose?
Spring, I think we can do, I can bring maybe up to speed.
Yeah, this is all Ron. Again, I do apologize, Tim. He does it all.
But anyway, I could, circulate a new draft of our document and just try to get it all done by email or communications, but I think it would be more solid if we had some sort of meeting where the 4 groups, mainly the the town conservation people, the Friends of the Blue Hills, and the Ponset River Association, and the DRC, which is kind of a laggard in this. But the other 3 have been really enthusiastic and have given me good recommendations. So I think if we had a meeting, it would be a good thing to do before we went out and told everybody else.
Yeah. So just putting that in the framework of what's written down on the page, because I tried to make it general enough that like reality could kind of be shoehorned into this. Right? I had expert and stakeholder conversations beginning in January and being ongoing, because we're just going to need to keep doing that. Every single item on the plan, to the extent that it's at all complicated, is going to take a while to work through the details. Could you, I have on here, form technical working groups to provide input and consultation on this topic area. I mean, is that basically what you're doing by convening these?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a technical working group, but I guess I would just feel better about having this plan be vetted and approved by this group, at least in draft. And then it could go on and actually do the work, but as a first step, again, it would just be good to have approval of the plan, the conservation plan, the climate action plan. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I could say we formed a technical working group, but, if we start sending it out and before the plan is even committed, we get comments, critique, support, whatever, from a variety of different people across the town, it kind of, for me, confuses the process.
Right, well, so another thing, this was in Tracy's plan, but I tried to clarify here. There's a broad outreach as distinguished from public feedback on the draft climate action plan. Um, the broad outreach has different goals. Goals being there were 5 goals. One was spreading general awareness of science and expected impact of climate change, necessary private action, Commonwealth climate roadmap, like just the sort of general content of our work, right? Second, to gather data on residents' climate beliefs, knowledge of solutions, willingness to make changes, obstacles. The sort of general information gathering, and that is the focus of broad outreach, which could begin basically now. Right?
Yeah,
On this timeline I've got here.
yeah,
Where we're thinking about how to get people more engaged in a more general way. And then the public feedback on a draft action plan. Gets into the further goals, which is identifying and refining specific action recommendations, right? Primarily working on that with stakeholders and experts now, but eventually we want to give residents an opportunity to engage with that and getting buy-in and support for those specific recommendations. Obviously, you can't do that until they get written out.
with the first part, broad engagement, could you say that that's more awareness raising and engagement? That, to me, that would be a better terms.
Yes. And also, inviting people into the work. And so having these technical working groups, I think is a valuable, one of the things I was most pleased about this month was because we had this vacancy and we discovered, there's actually people in town who want to help. Right? And that's a great feeling. We need to make it clear how people can help. So I think having some kind of working group around each of the topic areas, so you don't necessarily have to serve on the committee to come and help hash out what should be in the conservation plan. But then, Ron and Maggie don't have to do everything.
Well, no, it's Ron doing everything. But I was also thinking that there are other, meetings going on. So, the planning department has a, East Milton Overlay District, public forum, I think next week, I think it's the 25th. So maybe if somebody wanted to come and just carve out, 5 minutes, because at our last forum for East Milton, there was a pretty big crowd. So maybe you kind of take advantage of maybe an existing forum, just to say, hey, this is what's going on. Maybe if we had a flyer to hand out, or a survey for people to do. Maybe people are kind of tired of surveys these days, but, just so people know in town what's going on, because I think I might have mentioned it before, when all of a sudden the bike and pedestrian master plan was being adopted, like nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Until all of a sudden it was drafted, and then neighborhood associations had issues with certain things, and then it was too late to change. And that was really disappointing to my neighborhood association, because they kind of had a lot to say about it. So it's just trying to engage people before something is actually written.
Well, I think that I have questions personally about what it means to have a climate action plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the work of getting buy-in for the specific elements of the plan, that's the implementation. That takes years. But I think having taking the example of the pedestrian plan, having that plan doesn't mean the town is committed to do everything that's in it. It's just we put together a strategy to get these certain outcomes, here are the tactics, right? But then to actually change that road to one way requires some additional, so in a way, the creation of the plan, put it on your radar so that now you can oppose those specific elements if that's what you want to do,
Yeah.
right? And I think similarly.
But people don't like to oppose.
Well,
That's
sure.
the problem. People want to be more part of the solution. So it's hard to get up and oppose. Like, how can you oppose a pedestrian plan
That's
or a
true.
bike
So
plan? It's like,
framing
you
and
just
using the
make
right
it
words
feel-
to frame that is going to be really important.
Yeah,
Because I think, like, when I think about getting to a draft climate action plan, it's like, I want to get something specific enough that people can be drawn out into that discussion, right? And we can get to the right answer.
Bill,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
in talking to stakeholders, I've found that, if you provide them with, some of the written stuff that we already have, like if you are looking for information or a position from them, if you give them something that's written, they have more chance to give you feedback and in fact, give you some good ideas. And if you just try and present it to them, it's too vague. So I've been, providing people before we meet with the, sections of the draft or the whole draft of what I'm going to talk to them about. And, explaining to them clearly that this is the first draft, that I want your feedback, I want your ideas. And that's very helpful to them, I think. And because if you don't do that, you almost get no response. And so you're not getting as much out of it, out of the meetings, without having given them something in writing. Just my feeling on that. But so far, with the experience I've had, it seems to work much better.
You know, I would second that. I think you need something to show them. And I think having it, just label everything as a draft until it's final. A draft means it's, editable and we're getting your feedback. And if people have the chance to comment on it, that will build support and buy-in. They may not like every aspect of it, but they'll appreciate that they were asked.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, one question I have about the framing of the plan, like other plans get finalized at some point, or we have a finalized bike and pedestrian plan, we have a finalized master implementation plan. But then implementation goes on for years and they do change, right? And I think that'll be the same here. What is it, who's approving the climate action plan? What does it mean when they approve it, right? Because it's certainly, for example, with the specialized building code that's under consideration now, that's something that I put in an initial draft recommendation. Even if we approve the climate action plan, that would still have to go through all the processes going through right now in order to happen. So if somebody had approved that plan, what does that even mean? I think it would help us to clarify the scope of what we're trying to do, because I don't think that this committee is going to be able to assess the feasibility or support of everything that's necessary to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Like, I think our assignment is to write down a list of things that, if they were done, would achieve that goal, that are at least, there's some precedent for doing elsewhere. And then to use that list as a starting point for finding out which is low-hanging fruit. Is there unanimous support for some of these things? Or maybe there's like absolutely no way in today's political and economic environment that item 7C is going to happen, but then that's just information for
Right.
what needs to change so that people will support that.
Yeah, and that was sort of a question that I had too with the whole economic part of it, the selectmen will be putting forth, an override, an operational override, that's probably like $10 million in the fall. And, so, a lot of these things are aspirational, and I would love to put a moratorium on taking down trees, but I am a little bit afraid that we're gonna, do a lot of work and there won't be any money to support it.
Yeah,
There's even, like, we don't have the money now to do a lot of our maintenance, even keeping up with our roads. From my understanding, it's like $20 to $30 million to take care of all of our roads, and then even I heard recently that, like the inverter at Collica and Cunningham hasn't been operational for the past, year to year and a half.
inverter.
Yeah, so they have been, we've been paying a lot more money. No one's been paying attention to it because the bills go to the school department, not consolidated facilities. And consolidated facilities are the ones who maintain it, so they didn't know it was.
Their installers should know.
Yeah, so there was some sort, and again, this is only, I'm hearing recently of this, so I don't have all the information, but it's been going on, a problem for a year. And there's no checks or balances. So that was kind of a concern for me.
So I suggest that if we frame this right, then we can write it faster. And I think being explicit that, figuring out what's feasible and practical in the near term is the implementation step, right? And so the first draft is what is necessary to reach these emissions reductions. I guarantee you it will not all be possible. Right, under the current circumstances. But then you have that roadmap of like, all right, what on here should we prioritize actually putting in the hours to fix some of these problems and try to get ourselves in a position where we could do some version of that in the real world. Right? But you need that aspirational framework first.
There's a bill, in our state government to make Massachusetts the leader in climate tech for the world, not just the country, but the world. Because the Inflation Reduction Act has a tremendous amount of money available for this type of work. And right now, Texas has made it much easier to install solar. Massachusetts has very strict permitting, so it's hard to cite things. So, what could the state legislature do to ease things like that? And the problem, I think, is that you pay a little bit more money for something, and no one wants to pay more money ever. But the act of not doing something, like think about, our hottest summers leading all the way through November. We're going to air condition all our schools. How expensive would that be? And true, is the town of Milton, reducing our emissions gonna affect the climate, right? We're a drop, but if everyone that does something, it will reduce this climate emergency, and which will be very expensive in so many ways.
I do in terms of change curves, right? So I mean, electric cars were an oddity until Tesla made them cool, right? And focused on people who could afford them first, but there's a process and now they're becoming more mainstream, right? And similarly, I often hear what's the point of tackling this when China isn't or when Georgia isn't? But Massachusetts pioneered the model for Obamacare. And then it was successful here and successful enough that it was adopted nationally. And I think I'm proud to live in a state that is leading the way on showing that this can practically be done and not just like, marching and blaming fossil fuel companies, but actually trying to fix it through, our energy and,
It also supports jobs.
Yeah.
There's so many new jobs that are available in this type of work.
yeah, that's why we're here, right? We want to do this. But so, I mean, to get to I think the brass tacks of, like, if we approve this, we'd be saying, we're gonna write down kind of a more or less complete plan by June-ish. Knowing that it's not gonna be, done. But then just getting to a starting point that's complete.
It's not a forever plan. It's the base, and any strategic plan that's good is built into it, the reformulation of the plan
Yeah.
for the future. And that would be an important ingredient. And it might be good to point out somewhere in the plan relative to this discussion related to economics, that oftentimes the cost of not doing something in the long term exceeds the cost of doing something. And that's where communities and other entities, businesses and nonprofits, et cetera, really get penalized when their economic sin is a sin of omission rather than one of commission.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from the personal experience of having, so I put a lot of hours into advocating for the specialized building code since our last meeting. And digging into those kinds of questions in detail, it just took a lot of time. And that's just going to be one of dozens of things that we have on here. So I no longer feel like it's realistic for us to have done that level of work for every single thing before there's a document, right? Or even before it's approved. I'm still a little unclear what approved would mean. I would say, well, no, I think it has to be, we've at this point got one that is sort of the centerpiece of our process around climate action planning, and we're going to update it every year or whatever it is. I think there needs to be an ongoing process where you keep working on it and engaging with it to get bits of it done and try to make more of it realistic than was last year.
Does it have to get approved by town meeting like the master plan did?
Should go to the select board.
The whole plan
I
itself?
charged it for consideration by town meeting, but I didn't very understand that.
Yeah, but we initially go with the select, because that's where the charge came from, so we'd have to go back to them and they would make the determination, I think.
If it needs to be town meeting approved.
But at one point, I know town meeting doesn't like to take symbolic votes, right? And because when a while back there was a kind of rash of town meetings declaring climate emergencies, right? And folks didn't want to do that in Milton because it's just a symbolic vote, right? I mean, if you have a climate action plan where the individual items require a town meeting vote in their own right, what does it mean to approve it at town meeting? That's a question I have.
I'm keeping an eye on
Yeah, I know. I sort of gave up on being done myself.
Oh, and the only other comment
Should I
on
just
your,
back up from
Yeah.
on this, no item in the warrant gets into the warrant unless it's approved by the select board.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying earlier, from what it is that we adopt, submit to the select board would have the responsibility of either coming back to us for clarifications, et cetera, before it might make a presentation to the town meeting. It's just for consideration by the town meeting in the charge. And I think the select board has to define what consideration by the town meeting means.
Yeah, I mean, if I were a town meeting member and you gave me, this would probably be like a 30-page document with action items covering like every aspect of our economy, and you asked me to approve it, even as into this stuff as I am, I think I'd be overwhelmed.
and even like with the master plan, there are parts of it that are in conflict with each other. So it is kind of challenging sometimes because two opposing views could be quoting from the master plan.
Just like the Bible.
Yeah. So my other, question under your guiding principles,
Mhm.
it should messaging should emphasize positive reasons for hope, solutions, and connections to shared values, but then under A, it says abstract language and jargon should be avoided.
Mhm.
So I wasn't sure, like, I think hope and connections to shared values tend to be considered abstract language.
I guess,
So that,
I borrowed that language from an engagement plan.
so I like solutions, because that's not if you
Well,
provide
I
a
think
solution.
abstract language, it was meaning like scientific jargon.
Hmm.
Or electrification or net zero. There's a lot of marketing research that says that nobody that climate wants knows what that stuff means. But a lot of people, I think 80% of Americans are concerned about climate change. It may not be their top concern, but they are concerned. And connecting it back to protecting the future for your children is the most effective messaging, not, clean tech jobs as much as that excites.
Yeah, and so even that's what even like, it comes before the planning board or, applications, and there's one before us now that is taking down 300 trees. So to me, that is, I think that's awful. And as, the UN has declared, we are in the decade of restoration, and the easiest way to prevent climate change is not to remove trees and to pave over open space. And when we talk about different parts of our master plan being in conflict, another plan that's being discussed is taking some land across the street for the library and removing trees and putting in a parking lot. So I'm totally against adding more impervious surfaces in town. And I'm totally in support of keeping our open spaces and our trees. So I personally think we need to prioritize our trees and our open spaces. And I know reducing our emissions is a top priority, but we wouldn't have to reduce our emissions if we were more green.
I don't think the carbon budget works out that way.
Yeah.
We really do have to reduce emissions and sustain the, but at any rate, to bring it back to this, it doesn't feel like, are we ready to vote on this?
No.
I don't think it's critical. Yeah.
So if you and others maybe have this idea, and I think you're probably right, that a climate plan with 40 different activities is going to be hard for people to comprehend, understand, and act on. Is there value in, at this point in time, consolidating, prioritizing, or we go ahead, or do we just go ahead on this multi-track system that we're on?
I think it might be interesting to first put out there in the plan, like the draft that we have now, and perhaps some of our survey and outreach is like, list your top 5 that you would support or that you would do to help us focus, and develop a plan that, would be workable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I think of getting to a draft plan to start working from, I'm thinking of one example that I come back to a lot is Wayland's plan, which is about 11 pages. And that was done without consulting support, which is a lot of the plans you read, MAPC or some other professional consulting company was engaged to help them write it. And so you get 5 times as many pages, lots of pretty pictures, but that's hard to do without professional funded support. And maybe not really necessary, because the longer it is, the fewer people read it. Can't remember where I was going with that.
I know.
So do we
So-
think that we could just knuckle down, get something? I mean, I think we've all written sort of key action recommendations, and just fleshing that out to the next level of detail and stringing together with an introduction and
Yes.
some framing, things like this is aspirational, we're going to iterate on it. We're giving recommendations for reducing emissions. We're not saying that everything in this plan can be done tomorrow. These kinds of things. So roughly by June. Says
And that might be a good point with that in hand, to make the interim report to the select board.
Yeah.
And have some initial feedback from that.
Mhm. I think we do need to move on. Tracy, we're here, she would have. I've done that a while ago. Do folks want to vote on this, or does that feel premature?
Need a vote or do?
I don't know if it's,
Consensus.
yeah, I want buy-in,
I appreciate all the work you've done here.
yeah,
How does this happen?
we have to. Like the, right,
There are like a lot of different things going on here.
yeah, so. I think it's more like a menu of the kinds of things we ought to be doing, and that's one reason why. Now understanding personally how much time it takes.
Yeah,
I've made both broad and. I made all the kinds of engagement kind of ongoing forever. Like, even once we have a plan, I think we'll need to continue engaging the community to build buy-in and awareness and when things get closer to actually being done, you know, costs, funding mechanisms, all those things. We're not gonna know all that in the first job. Okay, so let's move on.
So you're the consensus you need, that you feel comfortable.
I think so.
Don't you, hearing you say no, so.
Yeah. All right, so next topic, and this actually might help bring some specificity to the discussion we had. Jack has had some discussions with MATV on producing video content in the kind of general outreach
Yes.
vein. Do you want to?
They're very interested. They'd like to do a promo video first. I think the idea is to have it like shorter, maybe like a 3-minute video, where they do some interviews of the members. So if anyone would like to do that, please let me know. And I think the question would be for you guys, what would you want to have in that initial statement? In those interviews, we can just write a draft, write a script for the interviews. And then they'd also like to do at the next meeting some like B-roll footage of the meeting. If you guys would be okay with that too. And then, yeah, so I think we were talking, Alex and I were talking with them. I have to follow up on the video for the specialized opt-in stretch code, but they're interested in doing videos like that. So yeah, I think there'll be a very key part of the outreach.
Yeah, I've been really thinking a lot about video content. After, as a concerned citizen trying to watch public meetings or public forums, they often an hour or more. And but we live in a world where most people consume their information in sort of 30-second to 5-minute chunks. So I think as we have specific messages we want to get out, producing short videos that people can consume on YouTube.
Instagram.
And they're
might be
all
more,
about the short form. I think we actually made a couple. I don't know if you guys have seen called the Environmental Minute, and they're very short. So sorry.
Yeah, it's certainly no easy thing to get people to see your content that you put online. And I don't expect that will suddenly become easy after we've done this, but I think it's, it's a way of getting creative about, giving people another way to know what's going on.
Do we need to vote on this?
I don't think so, unless,
Sounds fabulous.
Unless, yeah.
I vote you to be the spokesperson for me.
Oh, for you? Yeah, would anyone want to be interviewed? Doesn't have to be within the next month or so, but.
Sure.
Sure, cool.
This is an excellent vehicle for bringing the existence of this charging in body to the public. Most people that talk to me about this don't know that we exist. So it's a very small slice of the town that's aware of this committee, much bigger slice of the town that's aware of climate issues, but don't know that we're the funnel for them to come to.
Yeah, and I think I'd like them to know who's on the committee, the sort of rough topical breakdown, now that we've figured that out. This is who's working on what. If we agree to this engagement plan, which includes creating working groups in the topical areas, say, like an opportunity for you to engage and say, I would like to be in your working group on extreme heat, right? Those are the kinds of things we could put in a intro to the committee video.
As a quick aside, there was a lot of discussion about the Board of Health meeting that occurred because they were going to talk about the beavers on Turkish Pond. So we could just say we're going to talk about those beavers, and I get a lot of interest.
Beavers didn't make it in my key action draft. I'm open to
Conservation.
I'm open to learning. Great.
I think that, plastering of logo, any place we can put it up would be a good thing to do.
I also have I have a bunch of, there's a library of slides I put together, including the 4 or 5 on just overview of the community. Like to, at some point, make those available to all of you, like you were going to, somebody asked you to present about what we're doing somewhere.
Yeah, and so our work with Apex is wrapping up next week, so we will have access to the whole slew of design elements for PowerPoints, flyers, all that good stuff. So that is coming as well.
Any more discussion on this topic? All right. Sorry to make you wait so long. Next, John sharing his key action recommendations to prepare for extreme heat waves.
Okay. I think couple of principles we have to remember is one, the people most affected by heat waves are the very young, the elderly, the chronically ill, the socially isolated people, and the people without access to air conditioning. I think the second principle we have to keep in mind is heat waves really have to be considered with situations where there is electricity and situations where there isn't electricity. And the fact that prolonged heat wave places excessive stress on the electrical supply grid, it's possible that the electricity will be out in a major heat wave. So we have to think about the question of where are facility generators and who has home generators, because with electricity we have lots of options for cooling centers. Without, it's a whole nother ballgame. We really have to consider those places that have major generators that will cover their whole facility. With stakeholders, I've considered the major stakeholders to be practicing physicians, the Milton Council and Milton Hospital, Milton Council of Aging, and then think about available facilities. So with the physicians, I had a very nice conversation with Dr. John Baravecchio, who was president of the staff at Milton Hospital in the past, and he's connected me with Mark Hodgman, a cardiologist, and Daniel Driscoll, who deals with elderly people. I haven't been able to get together with Richard Fernandez, who's president of Milton Hospital, but I've gotten a lot of information about the hospital through the physicians. The Milton Council of Aging has been disappointing. The response I got back from Christine Stanton was, "Thank you for the invitation, but I can't commit at this time. Feel free to keep me posted on the work you're doing," which was kind of a surprising response. But anyway, I think thinking about facilities usable for people without access to air conditioning, with the electrical grid intact, the town hall is air conditioned, town library has air conditioned, council of aging, as far as government and government related facilities, private facilities, Milton Hospital, South Shore Mall, the Fruit Center Marketplace, churches, other shops and restaurants all have air conditioning, so that these are places people can go. And but without support of the electrical grid, you're relying on places with air conditioning. And if you think about government, there aren't many. I think town hall here probably has a backup generator. I don't know that it does, but I would expect that it does. Private facilities, Milton Hospital certainly has backup generator that will cover the whole facility. Curry College, Milton Academy are options, but these are private facilities that aren't necessarily prepared to take in people. Milton Hospital, on the other hand, would be. And so that people would be able to use not only the hospital, but some of the common areas in the hospital if they really needed to get relief from the heat. We really need to think about lifestyle changes to promulgate and implement by individuals in response to heat waves, which includes making use of air conditioning for cooling and having central air conditioning or air conditioning to some extent in your house. I think we're at a point where most of the people do, but there are people that don't. Knowing something about acclimation time and how to acclimate, going outside in the morning or evening and not pushing yourself past comfort. All of these are things that are kind of common sense, but yet can be part of an informational process for this. In terms of really more distinct knowledge for individuals is knowing the signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, maintaining understanding what heat-related illness is and knowing and having water available. Then thinking about the possibility that there's going to be a power outage and how to deal with that is certainly important. And then emergency community planning preparedness in response to heat waves. I think we need to make sure that there's a lead agency that is involved in in this, whether it's fire, ambulance, police, whatever office, it is, it needs to be, designated and, identified. And, they should use, and activate and deactivate a specific warning system. And, then in terms of information on dissemination of this information, we've kind of talked about it here in regard to the other things in terms of using community TV, signage and other things. And then the hardest problem is figuring out how to implement a response targeting the high-risk populations, especially the people who are essentially removed from regular society. And actually, in talking to Dr. Baravecchio, he suggested the Visiting Nurses Association as a vehicle to deliver much of this information that I've talked about that needs to get out. And especially those people who are not in a position to get it otherwise. And also another approach would be, for example, the Council on Aging has a newsletter, and to get some of that information into their newsletter would be very good. And also churches and clergy can be helpful in disseminating information where you leave some of this as a flyer in church. And I think what it comes down to is assuring the availability of drinking water and electricity are the primary concerns and targets that need to be implemented in terms of protection against extreme heat waves. So those are the main points that I've thought about in terms of dealing with this. And I think we have experience with heat waves, and heat waves are going to happen no matter whether climate change is terrible or minor in the future. But this information will be useful and will be usable by people regardless of what the future is, because we know from history that we have to deal with heat waves every now and then. So that's where we are on this topic.
Thank you so much. I think this is really important because while we've dealt with them historically, heat waves are expected to intensify and get longer. And when you combine that with the rapid transformation of the grid, I think it's natural for people to worry about longer power outages than we've experienced in the past. Growing electricity demand with electrification. So I think it's absolutely necessary to combine a push for electrification with this kind of planning, right? And in researching all electric school buildings or the building code work, this comes up a lot. People are incorporating plans for warming and cooling centers for vulnerable population as part of their plans for new municipal infrastructure. And I think we should absolutely make sure that we're doing that here in Milton as well. I don't know if we have any formal plans for emergency heating and cooling, especially in the case of a power outage.
I think the Board of Health, I think, is a good resource. And, my mother has been ill the last few months, and we've had a lot of support from social elder services. So you could add that maybe to your visiting nurses.
And this, the other thing that pops to mind is the microgrid feasibility study that just wrapped up. When it moves into the stage of seeking funding, I think this is an important reason to put in the profile. It's creating a bunch of municipal locations that will have their own on-site electricity generation, the ability to store it. But that doesn't mean that it's currently being designed with enough sort of capacity. I mean, how many people could it shelter in an emergency? Right?
Well, I think the other thing to realize is that if there's a heat wave in Milton, chances are it's affecting all of eastern Massachusetts. And so that it's not going to be necessarily possible to get much help or shelter or cooling areas in adjacent towns. For example, if we have a heat wave and there's a loss of power in Milton, but not in Braintree, you could go to the South Shore Mall and be very comfortable. And each time I've recently gone to the South Shore Mall, there's not many people there. But anyway, I think this is the kind of thing that we have to think about in terms of the regional character of this.
And a lot of the all-electric construction that's happening these days still has fossil fuel backup power generation. And that's allowed under even the specialized building code without triggering mixed fuel compliance pathways. So I think these this is the sort of good fossil fuel infrastructure that you only use in emergencies, hopefully almost never. Right?
I think home generators are becoming more popular. In Milton, we don't lose electricity that often, but you really need them. In some other towns where there's more trees along the streets and so forth. I know when I lived in Weston, for example, we lost power at least once a month. And so that it was almost necessary to have a home generator. But here it's not quite so much.
Yeah, we lose power a lot. But we should also plant more trees because trees can reduce the heat island effect by about 10 degrees.
For sure.
So we need to plant more trees. That's my plant more trees.
Any other comments or questions?
Nice done.
I have just one suggestion. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about, but it's
Steven, your mic's a little choppy. Sorry. Sort of.
I don't know.
No.
It's a little choppy. Is there another?
I'm on wired government internet, so it might be on your side, but
Okay.
I don't know if I'm typing anything and I'll send an email.
Yes,
Sorry.
please send us the comments in
Yeah.
email. We
Can you
definitely
type in the
appreciate it.
chat?
Oh, in chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, fine too. I do want to be mindful of time though, and try to bring us home here. So we have 10 minutes for member updates on activities since the last meeting, sir. I know Arthur, you had a few comments you wanted to make.
I just mentioned that Jack and an intern in the town and I attended the recycling audit in Avon at the waste management plant, and we'll have a final report or a full report on that for the next meeting.
12%.
But
It was a 12% contamination rate, which is very good.
That's good.
That's good. Well, it's not bad. We didn't get charged extra, which is more towards like the 15-20% contamination rate of trash in the recycling. So we're doing pretty good.
Anybody else want to give a brief update?
Sure. So people send me things. And I looked at some of them, and one of them was about all electric schools. And so there was some really good information there. I have notes, which I'll add to my other like public documents. I watched the webinar on how US cities and counties are accelerating the deployment of EV charging infrastructure. And that had some really good information, including there's an opportunity for the town to join like the next peer learning cohort. So you get technical assistance provided by the federal government. And I think that due date to apply is beginning of April. Does this ring any bells with you? No. I'll send it along because maybe, you know, that free technical support sounds good in learning. And then I found, well, you know, I'm looking at transportation, but I'm also representing the school board. And I came across a really cool app for schools to use that allows parents to connect to carpool. And it has lots of nice features that, you know, you can filter by age and school, and it's only going to show you people who live near you. So you're not sharing your data with the whole town. And so I shared that with the superintendent, and he was interested in, you know, learning more about it, and with the Glover PTO, which they're going to be like holding up signs at pickup about emissions, and they're thinking about plans for reducing, you know, increasing carpooling, decreasing single occupancy trips or one student, one parent trips going into next year. So they're going to build a plan for that. So I feel good about those things. And then John and I finally connected after playing quite a bit of email tag. And so we talked about some ways we can coordinate reaching out to stakeholders, if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah. And that was all for me.
For myself, I think between the planning work that you see here, my other big activity was advocating for the specialized building code. It's been primarily sort of one-on-one outreach with experts and stakeholders. I spoke to Shauna Rourke on the school building committee to sort of understand potential impacts on the school building project. I've been to the Warren committee once, and we'll be back to present to them again on Monday where they make their recommendation, and did a presentation to the master planning implementation committee. And for that, I did make some sort of general overview materials about the committee, so happy to share any of that with any of you if it's useful to you.
So on that, the stretch code, does that apply to municipal buildings?
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
So all of the buildings would have
The
to.
stretch code, and which we're on, and the specialized code as well. They both have different requirements, but they cover residential and commercial.
And it's for
municipal.
new buildings.
Yeah. So that's what one of my questions was when I was reading this report, the Department of Energy Resources.
I'd be happy to discuss that with you in detail offline. I think
Oh, okay.
it's a deep rabbit hole to go down now.
Oh, yeah, okay, because it was just like under 8, it just said, both residential and commercial new construction as well as certain renovations and additions.
That's the stretch code.
That's the, okay.
It applies to renovations and additions.
Okay.
And we're already on.
We're already on that, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I've got pages and pages for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Um,
any other updates?
As I said before, I consulted with several stakeholder organizations around conservation lands. I got input from Friends of the Blue Hills, Pleasant River Valley Association, John's group, the DPW. There's a person there who tracks how much of the conservation land Milton actually owns, spoke to other owners, and I got that information. And I'm still trying to connect with the DRC. But I think, as I said before, those four groups have a lot more experience doing this than I do. And I got their input on the draft documents, so I think that's ready almost to be finalized. And I think if we can pull those four groups together, that would also help with fundraising for the work that is proposed.
Great, well, thank you all for all the work you're doing. As we've scratched the surface here. Really, really exciting to hear about it. So, well, look, I have select date for April meeting on here twice. Somebody's getting tired. So let's maybe quickly go over these upcoming meetings and then nail down our meeting date for April and then go home. So, yes, upcoming meetings. So there's a public forum plan for the specialized building code on April 4th. It'll be at the Council on Aging from 6 to 7:30. I'm working on that with Josh Everett-Lee. You're planning to sort of, it's obviously being publicized generally, but we'll do some targeted outreach to town meeting members as well. And I'm meeting with a group of folks from the building and development community to try to get some sort of on the ground feedback as well before that. And then on May 4th, Sustainable Milton is hosting a green fair, 10 to 4, I think is the time scheduled now. Will be right here on the town green. So keep your eyes out for news about that. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff they're planning. I'm watching the chat channel. There's a lot of cool ideas. Any other events that I didn't mention that people know about? Okay. All right. So April meeting date. Let's crack open our calendars. So I talked about either pushing it forward a Thursday a week or pushing it back a week. I think, Maggie, you told me that neither of those Thursdays works for you.
Yeah, the planning board meets the second and fourth Thursday.
So I'm open to doing it on like a Wednesday or of the week before or the week after. Is anybody, so you're leaving on Friday of the week after, is that right?
I'm away the week before, a whole week,
You're away the week before.
and I'm leaving on the 26th. So having it on the 24th would be fine for everybody.
April 24th works for me.
Works for me.
Okay, here.
Okay, that was even, so we shoot for 6 to 7:30 PM on Wednesday, April 24th. And with
To 10:30.
hopefully I could tell that this was an overstepped agenda. Just felt like a lot of things that needed to be discussed.
Very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Hopefully we'll be able to get back to our 90-minute window, going forward. So with that, I will, does anybody want to move to adjourn?
Ron, did you have a question?
I had a question, but I hesitate to bring it up.
You want to ask?
I'll ask it and we can discuss next time.
Yeah.
Do we have like a 2-3 sentence elevator speech about the Planning Action Committee and what our purpose in life is?
I will pass on, show you.
Okay.
So what you think.
And it might even be on the website.
Well, we
Under-
definitely have our charge. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's. what
that's
we're talking about.
exactly.
It's a bit, it's a lot of words.
Sometimes they are on the website, so
Yeah.
they'll double check them.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Hi.
Yeah, thank you all so much.